You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for April 30th, 2021. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the world headquarters of the Cornfield Resistance, where fortune cookies from our local Chinese restaurant are now directing this podcast. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Hi, Driftglass.
Hey, Blue Gal. I like it when we don't have to plan podcasts, when horoscopes and fortune cookies could just do all the work for us.
Because last week, the horoscope said Driftglass wasn't supposed to talk about politics.
Don't do a podcast. Don't do it.
Talk about politics at all. And this week, I got a fortune cookie that said, Friday will be your most creative day ever.
That's great.
And we looked at each other and thought, this fortune cookie, they don't have freshness dates.
No, there's no date stamp on these things. No.
This could be a 12-year-old fortune cookie, and I could have totally missed my chance.
No.
Go back to Friday.
Go back 11 years and listen to our podcast from then, because that's obviously our peak podcast. We've just been doing
no,
don't do that.
I always tell people not to do that. Don't go listen to early shows.
No. Well, we had
to get our 10,000 hours in.
We were pretty pro Romney then. A lot of McCain stuff came through.
Wanting tax cuts for rich people. Yeah. Back then.
God, yeah. An awful lot of stuff about, the Tea Party. We thought that was just a great idea.
But that does remind me of something, Driftglass.
It does?
I'm sorry to just dive right in, but we are going to talk about the Biden speech. And I want to thank Bradcast for having you on with Digby yesterday to do kind of a review of the show.
Well, Digby and Brad and Desi Doyen, his able
That's some
right
star
hand.
Power. You guys were all having a great time talking about the new ideas that are coming out of the Biden administration. It's pretty remarkable.
I was just Ringo. I'm just glad to be here. I'm just, I'm just whatever, man.
Nobody plays the drums like
that's true.
Ringo,
I can keep a beat. I brought sandwiches and just tried to ingratiate myself because these people are all have bigger.
Anyway, they enjoyed having you, and it's double dose of Driftglass weekend. So if you want to go listen to more Driftglass over at Bradcast, you can Google that. But what you said about 11 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And just thinking about what Joe Biden is saying about the future and reducing childhood poverty in particular, which was striking in the speech for the fact that Republicans did not clap over, reducing childhood poverty as if that's not on their agenda.
A bunch of miserable old hobgoblins didn't clap for, helping kids? Yeah.
Helping kids. No. Yeah. But they have not... They have neglected young people, forgetting that someday they will be older people for decades.
Well, on the other hand, they'll be dead. So what do they care?
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's right. But they certainly aren't planning long term for their party.
No. Well, what's the Republican plan on for climate change? Die early.
Well, what's the Republican plan? This is what I don't get. I don't get, and maybe it's just because I'm not seeing that they have money pouring in from the Koch brothers, and that's all they care about, right? And so future's bullshit. What we want is money today, money tomorrow. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly that's what these new Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, are simply scamming. They make as much off of a tweet about guns, in one tweet that we make in several months.
Right. Yes.
So
easily.
Yeah. At any rate, but I was thinking about healthcare and that very formative moment when you and I were waiting to see if our healthcare was going to be taken away.
Yes. In moments, plural.
2017.
It kept happening. They kept taking shots at it.
It kept happening, but Obama was there as a wall against that.
Right.
All of the 60 times that they voted for it. Then Trump gets, scams his way in with Russian help. Mm-hmm. I refuse to say elected, but he wins the election in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And by 2017, Republicans are voting in the House to take away our health insurance with no replacement.
That's true.
And Mitch McConnell has an all-white, all-male health care summit to come up with, because they voted 60 times repeal and replace with no replacement.
Right.
And so they have to come up with some sort of replacement, sort of, or pretend they have one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all white and all male Republicans sitting around a table deciding whether women and
children,
poor people and urban dwellers and anyone not already receiving health insurance from their employer is going to have access to health care in the United States.
That's right.
And you and I have talked about this many times, but watching mom cry, the idea that for our kids, a formative political moment was not what John McCain was doing or what Mitch McConnell was doing. It's what Fran was doing.
That's right.
And that is true for a lot of families.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that today with Biden cutting childhood poverty in half and the difference that an extra $300 per month per kid makes in a household. You know, that used to be more money than I had in my checking account when I first got divorced.
Yep.
Every month, that was how much, that was my cushion, was if I had $200 in the bank and the mortgage was paid, then I thought I could make it through the month.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was, you know, food. That was.
Yeah, I remember those days.
A field trip comes up and I've got to figure out how to pay for that.
Right.
Yeah. So for some people, this doubles or maybe even more I don't want to say, you know, extra income, because people are living on this money. They're spending it on clothes and food for their kids and diapers and necessities. So the difference that makes in the stress level in your household, how mom feels about things, what mom's able to do. If the ice cream truck comes by, is it possible to give your kid $2 to go out and get a popsicle? You know, that changes lives for people and is formative.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel as though, you know, I don't think that Biden is doing this for a craven political reason at all, but there is a craven political result to this.
Mm-hmm.
And Joy Reid said this week, she just tossed off, like, everybody knows this, and I knew it intellectually, I guess, but it hit me when she said, look, the 5-year-olds are majority non-white. The 5-year-olds are majority non-white.
Yep.
And they're coming. They're coming in 15 years. They're going to be voting.
Mm-hmm.
That's 4 election cycles, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
That's
it is.
not far, far away.
That's why if you're a Republican, you have to lock in your majorities now. You have
to choose the voters. You have to decide who's going to be allowed to vote and who's going to be forced to wait 6 hours to vote and be discouraged to vote.
And you have to make sure, because if you're a non-governing party, and we've also said this before, that conservatism cannot exist outside of opposition to something.
Mm-hmm.
It exists to stop something, to destroy something. And it needs an enemy at all times. And because that is true, they don't have a governing philosophy because they don't need one. Because they don't believe in government. What they believe in is stopping government and destroying government and choking government and liquidating government and looting government, which they can do from the minority. They don't need 3 branches of government. They need one. They need one half of one. They need the House or the Senate or the White House because they've got the courts.
Supreme Court.
Well, they've got that. They've got that. But only
they worked hard to get that.
They did. They worked for decades to get that. Yes, they did. They stole it and then they lied about it. And they looked in the camera with a straight face and lied about it. And I can't remember a single reporter ever pushing back against Mitch McConnell, just leering that death's head grin of his about stealing the Supreme Court in order to break the country's back. That's why he stole it. The only
person I heard say that Democrats have a legitimate gripe about that is one time Tucker Carlson said, and he wasn't on Fox. He was on another network. I got to admit it. The Democrats are right to be a little bit mad about that one. Well,
but that's it. It's this. If you don't believe that Republicans and conservatives, and I mean our conservative allies too, because they're in on this, are part of a long-term project to get rid of the government or so cripple the government that it can't do anything except, research and courts and war, then you're not paying attention. Because even our allies are now, it's because I listen to their podcasts, are bitching about the deficit and how you're going to pay for this. And government shouldn't be providing this and government should be doing that. And Joe Biden's, Charlie Sykes is saying this is a progressive fever dream. And let's distinguish between liberals and progressives, and they get into their fucking woke talk. They haven't learned anything. They still hate government, and by God, they still hate liberals.
Yeah.
And, Linda Chavez bitching that I voted for Joe Biden because I thought Donald Trump was crazy, but I thought I was getting a centrist. And here's this insane liberal, wish list that no one's talking about how you're going to pay for it. And then they go into their Reagan mode about what government shouldn't do. And people should be trusted to make decisions in their own lives and blah, blah, blah. And there's no such thing as systemic racism. These are supposed to be our allies.
Right.
These are people who are supposed to have been
the good ones.
These are people who are supposed to have been punched so hard in the face, in their ideological smug face, by the fact of Trump that they learned at least something about what their movement was really about and why it was fucked in the head from the beginning. And they haven't. They have no ability to learn anything new. Maybe it's because they're just wired that way. And maybe it's because the psychological damage that would come from them doing a Stuart Stevens and looking over their shoulder and saying, everything I believe is a lie, is too much for them. They can't do it. So they are defaulting back to the Republican Party of 2015 was just fine. And so we're having the same fights we were having then, which
I don't want to miss what a listener who you call that son of a bitch.
Yes.
Just because he's been with us forever. But Bill W. wrote to us this week and said he thought it was weird to have a president speak about helpful policies and investment in America and in Americans, and in a conversational tone after 5 years of the ravings of a screaming, lying moron. And you had what for me was just a wow moment about words and marketing with the Biden speech. I want you to share that.
Oh, sure. Well, you all remember Donald Trump getting real proud that he passed, he didn't really, an imaginary cognitive test. And the history of the Trump presidency, this is not the definitive history, but one way of gauging the Trump presidency is him staring like an idiot into a camera and going, person, woman, man, camera, TV. But the history of Biden's first 100 days, American jobs, American families, and American rescue. Simple.
American Rescue Act, the American Jobs Act, the American Families Act. And then you told me what the name of Bill Clinton's infrastructure bill was. Yeah, it was something ridiculous.
And Lawrence O'Donnell was laughing about this. And it was the Intermodal Transportation Improvement and something. And this is one of the really simple things that when I worked in government and as a Democrat for, virtually my entire adult life, except for that one unfortunate mistake I made when I was 18, has just been insane. As a writer, it's like you have a great story to tell and you suck at telling it. And you don't need to. There's a way to tell the Democratic story that is so compelling and so rich and so enthusiastic and hopeful and et cetera. And yet, because you are technocrats, because you are policy people, you find the most obscure, long, multisyllabic sentence in your bill and say, let's call it that. Let's call it that thing. No, do not call it that. Call it the American Jobs Act. And then debate the content of it. The other thing that we noticed about Biden's speech, since we're going to get into that now, is that he didn't establish any new agency.
No new agencies.
There'll be no foam core board that Mitch McConnell or whoever the hell can point to with a jillion little boxes in it going, see, this is the liberal bureaucracy they're establishing to steal your freedom and, give children insurance.
Right.
And there's no such thing. We're just going to run money for the most part through the same pipes that are out there now. And
by the way, we're also going to build new pipes with American workers.
Yes, we are. And believe me,
everybody understands water pipes. I think that's one reason that particular part of the infrastructure passed with 89-2 vote. And several Republicans sat out of that vote, which is astonishing in some ways, predictable in others.
Look, alien rock monsters don't drink water, so why would they worry about it?
But water going through pipes and coming out your faucet and being able to drink it because it doesn't have lead in it, that is something every single American, regardless of educational status, can understand.
Yes,
and wants.
And this is where I do not think our new conservative allies really understand their own political party, understand businesses. These are mostly people who've never had a job in their life other than sitting in front of a microphone complaining about liberals. They don't know how businesses work. They know how business speak in Reagan land works. They know how ideologically, but everything for them is reverse engineered from Reagan's ideology and from Ayn Rand and libertarianism backwards into this is what must be true. And
from their freshman college dorm room.
Yeah. Well, from their rarefied freshman college dorm room perspective. They do not understand that now this is, I'm going to do a little sidebar if you don't mind about manufacturing. Well, and this is about the people who are talking about the end of Reaganomics. Again, our dear Never Trump friend have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, because I listened to Tom Nichols bitching to Charlie Sykes this week about, you hear these liberals talking about trickle-down economics. Just shut up already. Trickle-down economics is just how the economy works now. And end of discussion. It was like, wow. I don't want to talk about anything other than the 70s. Because the 70s led to Reagan, and Reagan is God. And anything that happened after that is just a bunch of liberals carping. And he's stuck there. He can't move, because if he moves slightly into the future, he looks like a fucking fool. So he's not going to do that. But it is not just the economic legacy. The legacy of Reaganomics is not just the grotesque economic model. It's the brutal, Randite, moralizing ideology that said if you're poor, it's because you failed. Because of your inherent moral failings. If you're not rich, it's your fault. And if you're a drug addict, you're a criminal and it's your own goddamn fault. And the government is the problem. The reason you probably have all these problems is the unintended consequences of some liberal program or because of human nature. Government can't help you. Government can't fix it. In fact, government is in your way. If you're failing, it's because you're not tough enough. And this was the way to dress up the deeply rooted bigotry that powered the right's high-toned, in the right's bigotry in high-toned moral language. They wanted to talk about moral failing and the plight of this group and something of that group. But they didn't want to talk about the fact was they didn't like those people. And they needed to explain why the American system was failing them in terms of their own inherent flaws.
Right.
And then comes the opioid crisis, at which time it was white people who were addicts. And suddenly it's a medical problem. It's not a criminal problem.
Right.
And then you have the pandemic. And then you have the economic collapse. And you have miles-long food lines and people losing their businesses and losing their incomes and losing their families and losing their homes through no fault of their own. And there's no answer in the Republican playbook for what happens when shit hits the fan and you lose everything and it's not your fault. Because their moral universe, their Bible says, but it is your fault. Whatever the fuck happens to you is your own fault.
And this is the same thing that's going on with the sandwich generation.
Yes.
It's not your fault that your mother is 90 and broke her hip.
No.
And has to come live with you. Or go to a nursing home. And there are plenty of families out there who have decided, bless their hearts, that nursing homes are not good and that they're going to take care of mom at home. And that means somebody has to be at home all the time.
Exactly.
And I love what Michelle Goldberg said this week about her pandemic experience of trying to homeschool kids in a tiny apartment and trying to write her New York Times column and she was talking about the death of Reaganism and how desperately she wanted anyone to knock on her door and say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
You know? And this is the thing that I think the Republican Party just doesn't perceive, perhaps because all of them can afford great health care. All of the Republican representatives and senators can afford great health care.
Well, and all the media people living off of wingnut welfare who are being paid a lot of money to lie to the public.
And in terms of taking care of aging parents, they have all the money to do that. To hire someone from Haiti, let's face it, off the books, to take care of mom. So they don't see it as desperation, the desperation that it is for many people our age these days, to take care of an aging parent. And knowing that but for the grace of God, go us 20 years from now.
Exactly.
Where everyone is realizing that there's this huge generational bubble of people who are going to turn 70 and 80 and 90.
Yes.
in the next 30 years.
Yes, there is.
And we can either start building, as we did in 1946, started building new elementary schools for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And every white person born in 1946 had a new school to go to in kindergarten, had a new school to go to in junior high, had a new school to go to in high school, and then new dormitories in college. I mean, that was a thing that happened. You always moved in. I have a friend who was born right in 1946. Every time she changed schools, she was in a brand new building. And you were in a building that was less than 5 years old. Now, we have a school in Springfield that's going to be replaced that was built in 1948 and has been used continually. Since then, we have children in Springfield going to school in trailers because they had no money in these Title I schools for building.
Well, there are schools that don't have kitchens because kids went home for lunch because mom was at home. I mean,
and that's how old the school is. That's, these schools are from the 40s and 50s. They're built. And so we need investment in that. But again, that goes back to formative experiences of children who are going to be voters someday. Well, but getting back to this retirement and nursing home, people are at the age of they're thinking about that the next 20 years are going to be me being an old person.
Yeah.
And what's it going to be? Is it going to be me being in a nursing home that has one nurse for 20 patients? Mm-hmm. Or is it going to be, I'm going to be supported because through no fault of my own, I'm getting old.
Right. Well, and the reverse, I mean, at the other end of the bubble, through no fault of my own, I was born in 1946. I'm not me, but, and we need to then harness the American economy and American productivity to build an infrastructure to accommodate you. New schools and new hospitals and new roads and new bridges.
You've had that your whole life.
Yeah. And those people will not tolerate anything less at the other end of the bell curve.
Right.
And that's right. But now I'm very glad you mentioned demographic bubble because it has to do with manufacturing. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The thing that our Republican friends do not understand is the power of spending tax money on American businesses. Specifically, when I was in Chicago working in the manufacturing sector, working in government, part of my job, one fraction of my job was building public-private partnerships. And my little team got the most conservative manufacturing organization in Illinois to partner with the most liberal union in Illinois, to partner with the teachers union of Illinois, Chicago Teachers Union, to accomplish wonderful things. Amazing thing. And they did it because everyone had an interest in this happening. I could bring the money to the table. I was from the government and we had funding to do this. Businesses needed workers. Unions needed members. And teachers wanted to teach in a place that respected unions. And so they wanted a school built that had union teachers. It was not going to be used to bust the union, but to enhance it. And we created this virtuous cycle where the companies would provide the equipment to the high school and the high school would provide the workers to the businesses. And here's why. Businesses saw the demographic bubble coming. They saw that their workers of 50 and 60 years old were going to retire and there was no one to replace them because during those glorious years of Reaganomics, all of the people that would have gone into the pipeline went someplace else. They became hedge fund managers, they became bankers, they became tech people, which is all fine. But nobody went into metallurgy, blueprints, CNC operations, and so forth. And all of the investment these people had made over the decades in their equipment and in their supply chains and having survived decades of foreign competition and were still thriving, their big problem was their workforce is aging out. And they needed someone to come in and fund community colleges to teach people to go into manufacturing, show people that manufacturing jobs were really good jobs. They weren't dangerous or dirty anymore. They were actually pretty good. And that you can't have a manufacturing sector without a community college component. And the reason is very simple, because manufacturing companies can't turn their factories into classrooms. They need a place to send people to work on similar equipment so that they can come back and do the job.
It's too expensive to put a newbie on a $1 billion machine, $1 million machine.
And what they needed was socialism. They needed government to come in and build a special education facility.
You mean like a community college?
Yes, where many different manufacturers could send their people and get the good education. And you know what? That education was 16 weeks to 2 years long. It wasn't a college education.
Yeah, drift class. I think that the media has not done a good job of explaining community college to people.
Well, the media sucks at a lot of things, and that's one of them.
Go.
Yeah. And,
but I really think, I mean, you and I have kids in college now.
Yeah.
And people that live in an area where there is a community college that advertises what they offer and so forth.
Yep.
Knows what a community college is. But I don't know if the general public understands that when Joe Biden offers free community college to people,
they have no idea what that means.
I think that the glossing over of it by the media leads some people to believe that community college is where you smoke pot and take remedial English.
Right.
And waste 2 years of your life.
And I'm not going to lie. There's pot smoking and remedial English happening at community colleges.
And wasting 2 years of your life.
But not wasting 2 years of your life.
Yes.
Community colleges are, in fact, the most responsive educational institutions because they can change their curriculum fast enough to keep up with industry standards. They don't have.
I really want to see Biden hold community colleges accountable.
Yes.
In terms of hiring staff rather than hiring adjuncts. I realize that adjuncts give them the flexibility.
Yeah, I was an adjunct.
To do those things, to add and subtract classes. No. But it's terrible for those adjuncts to be worrying semester to semester whether they're going to have work.
I was such a person, and I worried a lot. I was doing it as a second job, so I wasn't worried nearly as much. And I gave away some of my classes to some of my colleagues who really did need them. I
would be homeless, right?
Yeah,
right.
And people would come down and basically camp out at a motel. 4 days a week because they were doing a circuit of different colleges just to make their nut. Meanwhile, the college was making money hand over fist. It was they were not the problem. Right. Maybe the commission that Kamala Harris will be heading up, designed to make it easier for Americans to join unions, can take up this issue as well. Because one of the other things that Joe Biden said is, unions built the middle class. We need more unions. We need to be easier to join, easier to negotiate, and I'm going to be totally in favor of that. And
community college teachers and adjuncts should be able to unionize. Yes.
Absolutely.
But getting back to this community college, just the idea that you can go to community college for 9 months and learn how to draw blood for a blood center.
Hematology.
Or learn how to drive a truck or load a truck or learn some OSHA training so that you learn how to do things safely in your company.
Well, all of those things and more, Blue Gal, and so many more, were part of the sectoral workforce economic approach that we pioneered in transportation, distribution, logistics, in nursing, in education, in tech, in manufacturing, and retail. And all of the anchor institutions for all of those sectors were community colleges because they were the most responsive. And it is remarkable to me that people who claim to understand capitalism and be pro-American business do not understand that when you tell the National Association of Manufacturers, who are a very conservative organization, that we want to take American tax dollars and buy American goods made by your members' companies, and we want to use them in America to build American jobs, National Association of Manufacturers is not going to say, nah, I don't think so. Not. And we want to protect you from unfair foreign competition. Nah, I don't think we're going to do that. Bullshit. They're not. Absolutely, they're not. I know from experience. I know from the model we established in Chicago that if you bypass the assholes in Congress and the idiots on Never Trump podcasts and the think tanks and just go to business owners and say, look, here's the deal. We want to spend tax dollars to buy your stuff and hire your people and train them to do better. Are you for that or against it? And the government will buy your stuff because your stuff is good.
And the government's going to help you, Joe Union, add 1,500 new members a year to your union. And the United Mine Workers yesterday comes out and basically adopts what Hillary Clinton offered them in 2016.
Right. But she offered it in a skirt, and that we can't have that.
Let's say she, as a Clinton, in a skirt, and that was unacceptable.
Monstrous. It was monstrous.
Trump, because Trump is pro-coal and puts on a hard hat and does a little dance. And so, but now they're coming out and saying, we support Biden's plan because we need job training for the next 100 years.
Oh, and
in order to exist.
One more thing that we always pitched when we were doing our manufacturing pitch, because there were a lot of people in Illinois who by their political affiliation you would think would have been on our side, but just their answer was, manufacturing is dead. Why even bother? It is. And we'd say, no, there are X thousands of really good jobs that go unfilled every month in this state.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, there is a multiplier effect.
Mm-hmm.
Every job you create or retain in the manufacturing sector leads to 2 or 3 more jobs being created in other sectors. The knock-on effect of a manufacturing job is astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not true of other sectors. Some of them are close, but manufacturing was, at least at the time, one of the highest multiplier effects. So if you create, or as Barack Obama did, save 1 million jobs in American automobile manufacturing, you have actually saved 3 to 4 million jobs in America because you kept all the knock-on jobs from also being lost. If we create 1 million jobs in manufacturing, you create 4 million jobs, and you create 4 million taxpayers, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a wonderful case to be made, and I get the impression that there are people in the White House now who actually understand this, and know how to explain it in terms of jobs, family, rescue. Very simple.
Jobs, family, rescue. Exactly.
Now, you want to talk about Catholic bishops. Is that right?
I do. I want to talk about Catholic bishops. And apparently there was some sort of announcement from some conservative Catholic bishops about whether Joe Biden, as a pro-choice Catholic, should take communion.
Yeah.
These are the guys that let Newt Gingrich join their church.
Yeah.
That let his 6-year mistress be ambassadress to the Holy See. So hypocrisy is a big deal coming from them. But it goes to a larger picture of something that I wrote. You're always talking about stuff you wrote for class.
I do.
And I don't get to talk too much about that.
Well, I always talk over you and don't let you do it.
And everything I'm writing now at Crooks and Liars, not writing for myself. But something I wrote in 2012. And this was about the whole birth control thing and Obamacare in 2012 was a huge thing, and how employers were deciding, Hobby Lobby was deciding that they weren't going to cover certain kinds of birth control because they believed that they caused abortion. Mm-hmm. And even though medical professionals were saying, no, they don't. Well, we believe they do.
Right.
And the employers got away with it. But so I wrote this in 2012 about the culture wars, and it's very pertinent to these bishops who are trying to parse out whether you can be pro-choice, which does not mean pro-abortion. It simply means pro-choice, and be a quote-unquote good Catholic. Bishops have made a bargain with their female parishioners for decades. Come to church, pay your tithe, take communion, and we won't ask about your IUD. Mm-hmm. I've had Catholic roommates who got engaged and got married and went through, Catholic class, premarital training, which they do in the church, where you and your spouse go and get communication lessons from the church. They never asked about premarital sex at those classes. So you just get married in the church by a priest, and we won't ask about premarital sex.
Yeah, don't ask, don't tell Jesus. So
right, it's don't ask, don't tell Jesus. Mm-hmm. Baptize your kids in the church, and we won't ask why you only have 2.
Right.
And then, as I said, they let Newt Gingrich become a member with his 6-year mistress, and then she became ambassador.
And a bag of jewelry.
And a bag of jewelry. Right. Oh, well, and yes, what is that? Tiffany's.
Yeah.
His Tiffany's credit line, I am absolutely sure, was buying watches for Catholic bishops in Maryland. I'm just absolutely convinced that that's how he was able to get all the paperwork signed to marry Callista and get the annulments on all his marriages. And, Kennedy's did that too.
Yeah. Well, and, papal indulgences have not gone away. They've gone crypto. That's all. So,
and this is the thing is, I connected this when I wrote in 2009 about this, because I write about this a lot. But when I wrote in 2009 about this, also talking about indulgences, because there's a connection. There's a lot of indulgences in the Republican Party, too, and in the media. Mm-hmm. It's not just that Gingrich doesn't realize that people can look up what he said 5 years or 5 minutes ago on the internet. Newt Gingrich has become a Catholic, I believe, because old-style Catholicism buys into what he and Republicans have believed all along. You may not be perfect, but you are always forgiven, provided you profess loyalty and devotion to the ideology involved. Mm-hmm. So long as you say you believe in the Holy Catholic Church or the Grand Old Party ideology, no matter how much you lie or how big a hypocrite you are, the indulgences come at you fast and easy. Mm-hmm. the Republican Party and the 24-hour news cycle that apparently needs people like Newt Gingrich to fill up fair and balanced programming minutes, doles out indulgences all the time. That's why compulsive gambler Bill Bennett and Christian right gambling benefactor Ralph Reed can appear on CNN as Republican analysts, and Wolf Blitzer doesn't bat an eye. It's why Newt Gingrich himself is allowed into the green room at This Week any Sunday morning he likes, whether Paul Krugman sits next to him or not. And it's why, despite his horrible records of affairs and total hypocrisy, he got to run for president in 2012. And notice John Edwards didn't. Because
I believe that Newt
we
Gingrich
don't
was
have
the
those
most.
kind of. I'm sorry, what?
I believe Newt Gingrich was the most invited guest on Meet the Press in 2010 or 9 or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he was, and he is still on Laura Ingraham all the time as the standard bearer of traditional conservative and he's now talking about the traditionalists. He's not saying Republicans. He's not saying Trumpists. He's saying traditional Americans. He's come up with that term.
It doesn't shock me that he shows up on Fox News, but the fact that David Gregory made it a cottage industry out of constantly rehabilitating Newt Gingrich's career.
Yeah.
He'd go out, he'd shit the bed, and David Gregory would invite him back in almost exactly 30 days later, never ask him anything, saying, former Speaker Newt Gingrich is here. Tell us about the Republican Party, Newt. And he'd always forgiven.
Well, and that job on the Sunday shows is now going to Rojo, Ron Johnson, and also Rick Scott of Florida. They have to have someone on to provide the Republican perspective. And the problem for them is that every time they do that, it's a crook and a liar.
So how long ago did you write this?
Part of it from 2009.
My wife is a very good writer. In case you all didn't know that, my wife is a very good writer and has been writing really well for a long time. These conservative Catholic bishops that are now parsing out whether Joe Biden should be allowed to take communion because of his political beliefs. Should Newt Gingrich be allowed to take communion after cheating on his wife for 6 years? Now, was that his first or second wife he was cheating on with his third wife?
Fourth wife.
Fourth wife.
He's on wife number 4, I'm pretty sure.
It's more than one. It's more than the Catholic allotted 2.
Yeah.
It's more than mulligan wife, you know?
Yeah. And then we get to Michelle Bachmann. Oh, my God.
Please, go run with it.
Well, she found a microphone this week because why wouldn't you? And Kenneth Copeland, who's this evangelical nut job, puts up a Facebook video and calls it the Victory Network, as if he's on cable. I don't know whether his audience believes it or not, but this is the Victory Network. It's him on Facebook. That's it. But he gets Michelle Bachmann on, and Michelle Bachmann says that Joe Biden's speech was the coming of the zombie apocalypse. Yeah. And that she has observed the curriculum for these new daycare centers that Joe Biden's going to shove your kids into. And they're going to teach your 3- and 4-year-olds critical race theory, Driftglass.
Yeah.
She's not, I'm not making that up. No. That's what she said.
And the only reason to listen to this is to understand what's going on inside the Führer bunker among these lunatics. Why, when they come storming out, every 2 years for elections or every so often in your life, why they appear deranged and nothing they say make any sense, because these are the people that we used to call the tribe that rub shit in their hair. Right. They're in a cave among each other, telling each other crazy shit and nodding in agreement. And every now and then it breaks out and the rest of us go, holy shit. That's Michelle Bachmann said that? That's Newt Gingrich? Oh yeah. No, this is normal among the lunatics. Well,
and this is what makes me scared for the future, which is the one thing they're so good at is flooding the zone.
Yes, they are.
And flooding the zone to the point where no one really knows what's true anymore. I don't know if my 4-year-old can go to a daycare center because they might learn critical race theory. They might. This was what depressed me this week about Fox having 2 debunked stories that continue to be reported on. Yeah. And that the House Minority Leader, who's an idiot, by the way, still pushes that Biden's trying to take away your hamburgers. Yeah. And it's a Murdoch circle, because that's New York Post. Yeah. And then, the same thing with Kamala Harris's children's book. Yes. Being forced on migrants. And I just thought about that. And 10, 15 years from now, crazy Uncle Liberty is going to insist to you that Kamala Harris made a profit by selling her book and forcing migrant children to have a copy of her book.
What do you mean? I mean, no, 15 months from now, he's going to believe that. And that's the problem. Yeah. They remember the lies as true. And whenever they run out of one lie, and the next one comes up, and the next one comes up.
There's a flood of the zone.
And that's why
always something else to make them scared.
That's why, if you, listener, wish to indulge yourself in individual debunkification of individual lies, I wish you well. I gave up on it because I found from personal experience, it never stops. There's no bottom to it. There's always another lie. And Crazy Uncle Liberty will always believe it. And it will always come from the same lying source. And you realize, he's the problem. His brain, his broke brain is the problem. There's no way you're going to convince this person to unbreak their brain. Because again, the psychological cost of looking in the mirror and admitting that their entire life is a lie, everything they believe is bullshit, and people like me were right all along, is far too high for them to bear. They're never going to do it. Now, they could never get away with this. They could never achieve power if they didn't have friends, the mainstream media, who like to play the both sides do it game. Because however bad you catch Crazy Uncle Liberty in a lie, his last resort is going to be, both sides do it. Both sides are bad. I don't need to be better than you because both sides are terrible. That's the absolute final fallback position for a compulsive, sociopathic, racist liar. Liberals are just as bad. And there is no greater source of nourishment for this lie than places like NBC News, which this week, after Biden's speech, NBC Politics, that would be Chuck Todd, tweeted out, President Biden was elected on a promise to work across the aisle, but his first address to a joint session of Congress made few overtures to Republicans.
Oh, man.
And I listened to that speech because I was going to be on the broadcast. I had to be prepared. He made tons of overtures to Republicans. He asked them very nicely. Now, he wasn't a black man asking them very nicely, so maybe it will have a slightly larger effect. But he asked them over and over again, look, if you have better ideas, I want to hear them. But we're not going to do nothing. That was the other bottom line. And that was always Barack Obama's line, too, is we have to do something. I will name this bill after you, Paul Ryan. I'll give you whatever you want, but you gotta solve the actual problem. And Republicans don't give a shit about solving the problem. So I heard a lot of overtures to Republicans. I heard, I don't want to be, I don't want to go on the offense. I don't want to offend anyone. Thank you for naming this program after my son. I heard of calm grandpa presenting a sweeping program in the most sort of authentic and extremely reasonable tone imaginable. And I saw a bunch of octogenarian white sociopaths and one black guy.
Millionaires.
Just all sneering at the whole idea of helping people.
And all of them millionaires.
Yeah. So it is important to keep track of what the Republican Party is doing and how they're plotting to wreck the country and how they're memory holding insurgency or insurrection rather. But it's also important to notice that now that Trump is gone, little green shoots of both siderism are popping up everywhere. You can see it on the Morning Joe show. You can hear all of our allies bitching about deficits again and on and on. They want to go back to the arguments they were winning. They believe they were winning in 2015. They want to go back to that Republican Party, and that Republican Party is the incubator for Donald Trump. So we can't go back to it. And that's why I don't trust any of these people. I mean, just as a brief aside, I do listen to their podcast. I listened to Bill Kristol during the long meandering, on one hand, on the other, and this and that, and so on and so forth, saying, insurrection is bad. And Liz Cheney's great. And, there were honorable Trump people who just wanted to get through the first term of Trump and then we could put it behind him, but they turned out to be liars. But, there's a difference between, people doing bad things for bad reasons and government doing bad things or misbehaving, if you will, for honorable reasons. And for example, Iran-Contra, was a perfectly honorable misunderstanding. And did they go too far? Sure. But did Barack Obama also go too far with the Iran deal? He did too. So, both sides really overreach. And Trump is this unique threat. And I just listened with my jaw on the floor going, that is Bill Kristol, a fucking sociopath. He cannot give up on the dream that Barack Obama was a monster. And
equally bad.
And that U.S. foreign policy, like the Iraq War and the Iran-Contra, were just, merry mix-ups by people who had nothing but the best interests of the country at heart. And he will never give that up because that is not something he believes. That is who he is. He is a right-wing, neocon, lying, blood-soaked sociopath down to his bones. And he will come on like grandpa and maunder and talk and rattle on and agree with you and disagree and decide
but
that.
That's a more pernicious way of flooding the zone as well.
It is. And that gets you on MSNBC.
Right. Because you're reasonable.
Exactly. That gets you paired off with, I don't know, somebody that you can laugh and joke with on the Brian Williams show. And that's what's so pernicious about it. Is because they want to go back to normalizing the both sides lie. And I don't want to go there because I know where it leads because it's already led there once.
That brings me to when you're talking about Iran-Contra. Several laws were broken.
Yeah. Treason was committed.
Treason was committed.
Yeah.
And going around the Congress to steal money and sell weapons to people. And I mean, that was illegal. And that is what comforts me about, Trumpists recounting ballots in Arizona and Trump selling pardons at the end of his, I laugh because it came out this week that Mr. Greenberg, who is Matt Gaetz's buddy, wrote a full confession with the help of Roger Stone in preparation for buying a pardon from Donald Trump for $250,000. That was the expectation, that Greenberg would be able to get a pardon from Trump for $250,000. And we know that Matt Gaetz wanted a blanket pardon.
Yeah. And you can see now why, can't you?
You can see now why. And so, there needs to be congressional oversight regarding the selling of pardons in the Trump White House. But, when all these pardons were coming out, it didn't bother me at all that Roger Stone was getting pardoned, because Roger Stone is a criminal.
Right.
And they're going to find more crimes because Roger Stone's going to go home and commit them.
Because that's what criminals do. They do crimes.
He thinks he's above the law. Yeah. He thinks he can get away with it all the time because so far he has. And so he's going to keep doing them. And what it takes, I think, and my fingers are crossed, is an attorney general like Merrick Garland, who is clearly not afraid to let his prosecutors go ahead and prosecute criminals. And they're going to weep and wail about witch hunt this and witch hunt that, and this is Nazi Germany.
Don't care.
And, well, you committed a crime, Rudy.
Yeah.
And then you go on TV and start talking about it. And the prosecutors on MSNBC are funny. They're like, not only is he talking about it, which, please, Rudy, keep talking, Rudy.
Keep talking, Rudy.
Go ahead. Go on, Tucker again, Rudy.
Hold up your phone again. It's all in here. Yeah. That's awesome, Rudy. That's awesome.
Turns out that two of the people that Rudy was dealing with on Ukraine were already cooperating with authorities.
Yeah. Oops.
Which means, as one of the MSNBC prosecutor commentators said, "Lordy, there are tapes.
Well,
I'll bet you.
I bet you there are tapes that'll fill in the gaps between the butt dialing he did all by himself,
and his trip down memory lane with the Borat movie."
Yeah. Well, and this is what happens. When you leave a raw hamburger in the sun for 3 weeks. And you come out and there are maggots all over it. The Republican Party created an ideology, created a party, and created an ethos that attracted people like Giuliani and Gates and Gomert and Bachmann and all the fucking rest of them. They can smell it miles away. This is a party
Lauren Boebert didn't run for Congress because she wants to write bills or sit on a committee.
No, and it is their ideology. It is the party. This is the attractor. These people weren't necessarily born this way, I hope, because none of us were born this way. But this is a magnet. The Republican Party has been a magnet for just the worst scum in the country, and I mean that in among the voters. And local elected officials are, if anything, worse than the national elected officials. And at the national level, and the media, this is a self-generating scumbag attraction machine. And has been for 30, 40 years. And everyone on the outside with an honest opinion, with clear eyes, could see this coming. And everyone on the inside who bailed at the last minute wants to swear they had nothing to do with it and didn't know about it. And those on the inside continue to go, this is great, man. We can do anything we want. As long as we can stack up guns behind us, we can screw anybody we want, literally and figuratively. And there's never going to be any consequences because we built a voting base that doesn't give a shit about anything, who are such fucking nihilists, have such contempt for this country. They will let us get away with anything as long as we own the lid, and that's where they're at. That's what they're doing. And that's why
you don't see anyone from QAnon with their passion about pedophilia jumping up and down about Matt Gaetz.
No, because he's one of them. He smells like them. He's friend. Smell his hand. Friend. And this is why you see I'm repeating this for the third time for emphasis, that the people who jumped ship, 3, 4, 5 years ago, the never Trumpers, are frantically rewriting history and frantically cutting off anyone who wants to talk about the GOP prior to 2015. I listened to this week on a competing podcast about how Donald Trump killed the Tea Party. And because the Tea Party was this sort of noble uprising of grassroots, blah, 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 and was that corrupted down the road. But it was, and no, Joe Scarborough said the Tea Party was a scam. Once it was safe to say that. David Brooks, who loved the Tea Party and jogged past them one day and knew that they were good people because they were near black people and they weren't fighting. So obviously it's a racist, non-racist grassroots movement. Finally had to admit, no, these are just Republicans who changed their name for, obvious reasons. But it is so important to these people to not have any of the stink of the GOP on them because they want to become the balancing middle in American politics. They want to become the place where the center goes. That's why Lydia Chavez is so angry at Joe Biden because I was promised a centrist and he's acting like a Democrat. Like, fuck you. You don't even know what any of those words mean anymore.
Yeah.
He's a socialist and he's doing European socialism. No, he's not. He's doing LBJ, FDR, old school Hubert Humphrey Democratic politics. Now, he probably is going to not get a lot of it done because he has a 1-vote margin.
Well, and I think he's totally willing to compromise on the taxes for rich people because he knows he doesn't give a shit. He wants the spending. And we're borrowing at 0% from ourselves, so who cares? But it's a principle of the thing of taxing the rich is a thing that we need to do. Yeah.
I will mention,
we're running out of time real quick.
I will do this in one sentence.
Okay.
Because I just wrote a long post and I'll put it in my notes. The former king of both sides do it is now the king of both sides don't. And I haven't stopped laughing. And I'm talking about Mr. Matthew Dowd, who has found a pair of Michael Stipes glasses and grown a beard and become me. And when I dropped him a helpful note through a nefarious, third-party route saying, hey, remember when you used to hate people who said shit like this and it would block them on Twitter? He blocked that person on Twitter. So all I can say is he hasn't changed at all. He, like an actor, all he has changed are his costumes. He doesn't believe he's a windsock.
This is going to market himself as a contributor to the zeitgeist of what's going on at the moment.
And the reason he has a job on television is because he and Nicole Wallace were both George W. Bush administration
and they're conveniently willing to forget the past and simply be on TV.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we move on to a news roundup, Blue Gal?
There's one more story I want to cover before we do news roundup.
Okay.
Because it was published on April 6th, but I had missed it, and I find it very dramatic and striking.
Oh, yeah.
This is in the Miami Herald. Cancer diagnoses see a huge spike at age 65. Doctors speculate why. And I don't think anyone listening to this podcast needs to speculate why all of a sudden at age 65, a whole bunch of people are finding out they have cancer.
Right.
It's because Medicare kicks in.
Right.
And then they're not afraid to go to the doctor anymore.
Absolutely.
Stanford Medical School discovered I'm reading this from the Miami Herald, discovered a substantial rise in new breast, lung, colon, and prostate cancer diagnoses nationwide at 65, which is when Americans become eligible for Medicare. A quick analysis of study senior author Joseph Schrager's patients' records revealed a 2-fold increase in lung cancer surgeries among 65-year-olds compared to 64-year-olds. Twice as many 65-year-olds getting lung cancer surgery as 64-year-olds.
So either thousands of 64-year-olds are suddenly taking up smoking, or it's because
people on the cusp
reason,
of Medicare eligibility wait for everything.
Absolutely.
And don't go to the doctor until they know it'll be paid for. And everyone listening to my voice right now knows somebody who is waiting for 65 to get their knees done or their teeth done or their eyes checked or that glaucoma thing that runs in my family. Or maybe I have prostate cancer. I'm going to wait until I'm 65 to have it taken care of. A hernia, whatever it is. When I'm 65, I'm going to have that done. And we need to address that. And I know there's plans to lower the Medicare age. What a lot of people don't seem to realize is every year you lower the Medicare age, you drop the premium cost for everybody else in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Because the older you get, the more expensive you are to insurance companies.
Right. And
the people that don't want this to happen are hospitals, because people who are 50 to 64 using hospitals for cancer treatment and for glaucoma surgery and et cetera, either have good insurance and are making money for the hospital that way, or are very seriously ill and are making money for the hospital that way. But we can't wait. People can't wait for cancer screenings. And it's human nature to do that, I understand. But if you know someone waiting for cancer screenings until they're 65, suggest that they go to an urgent care center or someplace to have that thing looked at.
Yes. And
in the meantime, do advocate for, at the very least. I realize Medicare for All is a chant that all of us are doing. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure whether for the United States doing that in one fell swoop is healthy for our economy. I've read lots of different articles about it from people who I believe are arguing in good faith about wanting universal coverage and understanding that in Mexico they have a hybrid system where. And I want corporations to be a part of the solution for this, frankly.
Yes.
They need to pay more in taxes for universal coverage.
I want them to have skin I want them to have skin in the game.
Right, exactly.
I really do. Yeah.
So, we can debate all of that, but at the very least, we need to be advocating for a lower Medicare eligibility age. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, your friends and neighbors and people that you know who are putting off medical care until they're 65, suggest that they at least have it looked at. Get the cancer screening, because that's important.
And separate and apart from that, there is the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
It's still out there. And now that the Donald Trump administration is not trying to sabotage it by not marketing it and restricting it and doing everything it can to destroy it. Eligibility is expanding. I think there's 800,000 new people who signed up for it in the last 100 days or 150 days.
They've got till May 15th to go in and change. And we did it. We got a bigger subsidy. Mm-hmm. But as I've said before, my girlfriend, who was not eligible for a subsidy before and is now, her subsidy is $1,400 a month for her and her husband, who are both professionals working for themselves.
Yep.
And they had to move and go into their own business because they're caring for an elderly relative. Duh.
Yep.
And they were not eligible for a subsidy. And now, and she was not eligible for a stimulus because they make too much money. Mm-hmm. But now she said, I'm getting a stimmy every month because my insurance is $1,400 less than it was before. And that's an enormous amount of money. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's only good for 2 years. They need to extend that and make it permanent.
Absolutely. But, and this falls under the heading of we're not there yet. We're still a long way there. But there are things that people can do right now, and things that people will be able to do if any of this legislation passes, that will improve their lives measurably. And
let's applaud Joe Biden for one other thing, and that is on his 100th day going to Georgia with the two senators, the two Democratic senators from Georgia, and raising his hand, holding hands and raising them up in the air with Jill Biden there too. Because the midterms started 3 weeks ago. Yes,
they did. The minute the insurrection failed, the midterm started.
Yeah.
And it's coming fast and furious, and it's going to be tight. And I'm going to white knuckle my way all the way through it. But for just right now, I'm going to enjoy what we have, hope for the future, and work as hard as I know how to make it sustainable. To get.
And I think it's great that Joe Biden is telling Georgia voters, in spite of everything that's happening there, he is still celebrating the win and saying, you guys changed the world, not just changed Georgia, not just changed the United States, you changed the world by electing 2 Democrats to the Senate. And the rest of us can change the world even more by, de-cinemanizing and de-mansionizing the threat in the United States Senate. And the calendar is very kind to us this time around. So let's get busy and pick a Senate race and start contributing to that. All right, let's do a news roundup, Driftglass.
Americans fully vaccinated against the coronavirus, which you and I both are, no longer need to wear masks outdoors in most situations except for large gatherings, according to the updated CDC guidance. Isn't that great? Isn't that just
good
great
news? Mm-hmm. According to CNN, the number of unaccompanied migrant children held in jail-like conditions by U.S. Customs and Border Protection dropped nearly 84% in the span of a month, according to a White House official, underscoring the significant progress made by this administration after reaching record-high custody figures.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas launched an internal probe to address the threat of domestic violent extremism within the Department of Homeland Security.
Within the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah. You mean they're racist and the cops? You're kidding.
And when Joe Biden said white nationalism is terrorism. Domestic terrorism, I had a little, my heart fluttered just a little bit in the best possible way.
The Senate voted to restore an Obama-era regulation designed to reduce climate-changing methane emissions from oil and gas fields.
Joe Biden is expected to propose an $80 billion funding boost for the IRS and increased authority to combat tax dodging by the wealthiest Americans, which he said would bring in, if enforced clearly, I think $1 trillion. I think that's right.
Biden signed an executive order to create a White House task force to promote union membership.
Yes.
Kamala Harris will lead the task force, which will issue recommendations about how the federal government can use its authority to help workers join labor unions and bargain collectively.
Yeah. Joe Biden, ever heard of him? Signed an executive order to raise the minimum wage paid by federal contractors to $15 an hour.
The Department of Agriculture extended a pandemic benefits program to feed up to 34 million children from low-income families over this summer. The plan will provide about $375 per child to buy food for the roughly 10 weeks they are out of school in the summer, about $7 a weekday.
And this is the longer version of what we've already talked about, but it bears repeating. Federal investigators executed search warrants at Rudy Giuliani's New York City home and office as part of a criminal investigation into his dealings in Ukraine. Investigators seized his electronic devices as part of a years-long investigation by Manhattan federal prosecutors into possible violation of foreign lobbying rules. The FBI also executed a search warrant at the Washington area home of Victoria Tenzing in connection with the Giuliani investigation. Tenzing, a lawyer close to Giuliani, had dealings with several Ukrainians in an effort to try to dig up dirt about Biden as he ran for president.
Biden nominated a critic of Trump's immigration policies to serve as director of ICE. If confirmed, Harris County, Texas Sheriff Ed Gonzalez would be the first politically appointed director in years since the Trump administration never had a Senate-confirmed director. You know, he liked acting.
He did.
Donald Trump liked acting.
He liked those acting people, you know.
Hey, can I say one more thing? Please, everybody. Now is not the time to not take care of yourselves. I know I was talking about cancer treatment and we're talking about immunization and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is this kind of collective sigh of relief that a lot of us are going through. Mm-hmm. In terms of, you know, a coherent president who's making sense and doing a lot of the right things. There's still a lot of stress out there. And I just want everyone who's listening to me right now, take a deep breath, take care of yourself, practice that breathing and self-care, because the zeitgeist, I think, sometimes is, wow, Biden's president and everything's going good.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, everything's not going 100% good. I'm doing fine, except that I'm dealing with my daughter is going off to college in this fall, and she has decided on Beloit College in Wisconsin, a wonderful little school that is, I have felt for years, was the right school for her. And she came to this conclusion on her own, I hope. She's very independent. I know she came to this conclusion on her own. But
the tapes that you put under her pillow at night saying, choose Beloit.
Go to Beloit.
Finally paid off, I think.
Go to Beloit.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I had traveled to Beloit with Junior Dude when we were looking for colleges, and he's graduating from college this year. I had gone with him to Beloit to look around. And I said to him, at that time, 5 years ago, I said, Junior Dude, this is not the school for you, but it may be the school for middle child. It really has a vibe that goes along with where I think she would be happy.
Yeah.
And they have a vegan bagel place in Beloit, Wisconsin that just flipped her. She just loved it. And everything about it just seems right. It just feels right. So for her. It's for her. And that's the point. I mean, I don't think it would be the right school for youngest child. She needs a larger campus and more sports, and she needs a different thing than they're different kids.
Yeah.
But watching middle child go is hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
Harder than my oldest boy, because mom and sons never really leave their moms.
No, that's true.
It's just, he is in constant contact with me, and we're very close. Middle child is an independent person who is so much like me.
Yeah.
She's a mini me, but would never admit it. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for me to watch her drive off to college and know that she's going off to make her own way and have her own heartbreaks and have her own successes and so forth. It's just different. It's just a different kind of pain and stress. And so I'm, Mother's Day's coming up, and I'm not going to cry. This is my last Mother's Day with her at home, and I know that she will never be home again. I mean, she will come visit, and she'll be home for vacations and so forth. But we are launching her.
Right.
And, she will make her own place from now on. And that's just hard.
Well,
so,
and the idea, which we have implanted in her head for years, that, Chicago is a pretty awesome city. I lived there for 25 years, and you guys visited me up there before we were married, and
right.
I gave you the really good tour of all the cool places and the cool restaurants and the cool things to do, and I still get a lot of shit from the kids about wwhy we didn't move to Chicago instead of to Springfield.
We do get a lot of
and there were very, very good reasons why that was not possible. But I hope that memory stays with her, because I think everyone, I'm biased in the sense I think everyone should have a big city part of their life. Should live somewhere that's not their hometown, that's a big city, preferably travel around the world. I got to do that when I was a little boy, and that really did shape a lot of my opinions and my preferences. But I'm kind of hoping that she'll anchor herself near Chicago, which is what basically both of my nieces have done, which puts her not 3,000 miles away, but 270 miles away.
Yeah.
Within striking distance.
And by the way, high-speed rail is coming.
High-speed rail. Thanks, Biden. They're going to get us there in 40 minutes.
We're going to have high-speed rail between Chicago and Springfield.
Anyway.
Very soon.
Yes.
Yeah. They're working on it now. So
you all take care of yourselves. It's been...
that's really what I wanted to say is just, people are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and looking forward to the summer and hoping things get better. And they're getting back to quote unquote normal or coming out again after this pandemic is stressful as hell for a lot of people. Just very, very difficult because the threat was so invisible, and the easiest way to deal with it was stay indoors and
the right way to deal with it. That was the right way to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, just you and I are discussing going to church on Sunday, and you don't seem quite ready yet. So.
Well, if you've ever seen a really cheesy disaster movie from the 70s or 80s, let's just say Meteor. At the end of the movie, the people straggling out of the subway covered with dust and dirt and having survived it don't look like the healthiest people around. Yeah. They're not the most put together, calm, easygoing. They're survivors. And everyone out there, you have survived a series of catastrophes.
Yeah.
Really historic. I mean, the insurgency and the Trump presidency and the pandemic and the general complete abandonment by your government of you as citizens
and you've survived the Reagan era.
Has been traumatic. And having, half a loaf, you get half a loaf every now and then, and that's stolen away from you. And then you're told you don't deserve it. And watching relatives and people oftentimes lose their minds, become zombies, become right-wing Republican lunatics who you can't talk to anymore.
Right.
Because all that comes pouring out of the mouth is Benghazi, Biden's laptop, Hunter Biden. And that's all. And you realize, they're just dead from the neck up. All of that collectively is sitting on your shoulders, weighing you down. And it's exhausting and it's stressful. And it should be respected and properly grieved and sorted out and dealt with sanely. And you should really, care for yourself, because you're carrying a lot of this. And people who you probably know or maybe don't know, who are not as well off as you, who might be in poorer circumstances, who might not be white middle-class people, have all of those burdens and double, triple, quadruple those burdens. The last month, we've been watching over and over again innocent people be murdered on television.
Right.
By people who are supposed to protect us. That in and of itself should traumatize us. But that on top of mass shootings, on top of everything else, we just have to honor the fact that all of this has happened to us and that it's going to take some time to not get over it, but put it in a proper perspective. And we do that by holding on to each other. Yeah.
Hold on, breathe, care, know that we care. We're thinking about you. Each and every one of you, we think about you guys.
You know what else we do each week? Each
week, we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week, we have a dog. This week's Internet dog is JP. JP is a small dog wearing a terrific hat in this picture. Now, his breed is Chinese Crested, and I've never heard of that breed before. It's a small dog.
Why would you cover up a mighty crest with a hat? I don't understand that.
He's got fluffy ears.
Oh, okay.
And he's a terrific snuggler. Apparently, loves to snuggle. And of course, JP eats freshly poured dog food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Direct, your pets will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured. You can visit JP at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. We're in need of Internet pets, folks.
We are.
And it doesn't matter if they've gone over the rainbow bridge or not. We never discriminate one way or the other. A pet is a pet, and a loved pet is a loved pet, and just send it to us, and we celebrate that love and that pet, and we don't discriminate, and we don't discuss it. So I will tell you, JP is very much alive and snuggling, just as a caveat. But we never discriminate about that. So feel free to send us any of your pets, any of your loved pets, and their stories behind them. And I always think of my mom being in charge of the Rainbow Bridge. She had so many cats and was a pet hoarder, and she's up there at the Rainbow Bridge as far as I'm concerned, taking care of all the animals. So feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Union! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. #Save the Post Office. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. And it's a labor of love. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details, our PayPal, postal address information, merch, all of it. It's all there at proleftpod.com. It's a great time to buy a Both Sides Don't t-shirt.
It is.
We don't make any money off of those.
We don't. We really don't.
But we love, if you guys come to Springfield and have coffee with us, and it's now okay. I think with masks, we would be glad to have you come down and visit us. We'd love to see you in a Both Sides Don't t-shirt. That'd be fun.
Sure. We can spot you across the street.
Yeah.
Here they come.
Please share our show on social media. Thank you so much for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties know that the upcoming White House cat will keep those 2 German Shepherds in line.
Let's think about living. Let's think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2021 DGBG Productions.